Hi, my name's Peter Jones. This story is called Disposal. Something fell on my head and, instinctively, I put my hand up. It felt wet and I brought my hand down again and looked at it. It was blood. I looked up at the ceiling and saw the red patch. Another drop fell through, this time onto the floor. Fortunately, the room I was in had floor tiles, so it should wipe up easily enough. Thank God the body in the loft hadn't been a few feet further over. The blood could have been dripping onto the carpet in one of the spare bedrooms, or perhaps a bed cover, and I wouldn't have known. Well, it was my own fault. When I wrapped it up, I'd assumed that since people stopped bleeding once the heart stops, there wouldn't have been any more blood. For that matter, I wouldn't have thought there'd have been much left. Heaven knows there'd been more than enough splashing around when I first stuck the knife in her. Well, it was gravity, I suppose, and as I said, my fault. I should have put her in a plastic bag rather than just wrapping her up in that sheet. Well, now I had two problems. Disposing of the body, which is what I'd been sitting here thinking about, and painting the ceiling. I wasn't sure which was more important. Well, putting her in the loft had been a purely temporary measure. I mean, I wanted to get rid of the body as soon as I could, but if anyone dropped by, well, I didn't want it lying around. But then, I didn't want them to see a blood-stained ceiling either. That's what you'd call a dead giveaway, I suppose. I decided that if anyone dropped by, I'd say I'd got the flu. Maybe the swine flu, I'd say. Yeah, that would keep them out. I'd already phoned everyone I could think of and told them that Shirley had left me to go off with some fella she'd met, and, well, that was one thing that wouldn't be a problem. I'd got the note in her own handwriting to prove it. You see, I'd come home unexpectedly and found it on the table. But she hadn't actually left. She was still in the bathroom. Which was lucky, of course, because it was the easiest place in the house to clean the mess up. Now, under the circumstances, you may find it difficult to believe that I loved Shirley very much. Too much, perhaps, since it was the thought of her going off with another man that made me snap. Well, now I was faced with the result of a moment's madness and, as I said, the associated problems. Whether committing the perfect murder is possible, I really don't know. What I do know is that committing a murder on impulse has definitely got problems associated with it. Anyway, it was no good leaving her up there dripping, so got the steps out again, climbed up through the trapdoor and brought her back down again. It was then that I heard her groan. Not a loud groan, you understand. In fact, for a moment I thought it might have been a bit of wind escaping. Well, I mean, I hadn't handled her that gently, hauling her back through the trapdoor. And it wasn't because I was being vindictive or anything like that, but, well, I mean, you tried pulling a corpse down through a loft from a loft sometime. Not that it was a corpse anymore. No, and this gave me an even greater problem than before. I mean, well, disposing of a dead body can't be easy, but what do you do with a live one that you thought you'd killed? Well, you might say the obvious thing to do would be to finish the job, but like I told you, I loved Shirley, and the moment of madness had passed now. I wanted to save her. It was just that it was going to be hard to explain how she got this way. Well, if I called an ambulance, I could say it was an accident, I suppose, but, well, how did that explain the blood stain in the ceiling? And then, of course, well, Shirley might not back me up on that explanation. Women can be a bit funny that way sometimes, especially when you've stabbed in the back a few times. Well, so I did what any thinking man would have done. I carried her to the car, plonked her on the back seat with several layers of newspaper under her and took her to the local swimming centre. Why there? Yes, I can hear you asking. Well, simple. Although it wasn't a busy sort of place, people were coming and going every few minutes. I just waited until there was no one in sight, uploaded her, and left her on the ground, secure in the knowledge that someone would find her within the next 5 or 10 minutes. Well, okay, I know it would have been better if she'd been admitted to the hospital sooner rather than later, but she was tough. Well, I mean, she'd survived so far, hadn't she? Having done that, I took off back home, stopping only to take the money, credit cards, driving licence and all other forms of ID I could find out of a handbag and then chuck them in the nearest rubbish bin. Oh, and I also picked up some sealing white. The idea was that when police came, they'd think that she'd been mugged. And by the time that she'd been identified and they'd contacted me, I would have got the house back in order. And since she hadn't seen me before I stuck the knife in her back, well, it could have been anyone, couldn't it? Oh well, only one thing left to do now. I know the fellow she was running off with and, well, I've still got the knife.